Hey, what's up everyone? This is SnackBox. Hope you all have a great start to the week. Guys, in this video, I want to talk about a team that I use for Chimera since 3 rotations now, and it worked very well. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And now let's get back to the video. So, currently we have the last rotation of the Chimera clan boss, which is rotation number 4. And as you can see, we have 4 weeks left, and then it will go back to rotation number 1. Now in this rotation, the ultimate form will have Spirit Affinity, and all the other forms, Ram, Lion, and Viper, will have Void Affinity, which is quite nice because you don't have to worry about affinities too much. We had 2 rotations that had 2 different affinities other than Void, and that was actually pretty limiting to what you can actually use, because some of the best nukers do not have Void Affinity, so it really matters in what rotation you use them, and their performance will be better or worse in some of the rotations. So in rotation number 1, the ultimate form was Void, and then the other forms were Force. In rotation number 2, the ultimate form was Force, and the other forms were Magic. In rotation number 3, we had Magic and Spirit. And in this final rotation, rotation number 4, we now have Spirit and Void. Now there actually is one Void champion that is really strong, probably one of the best legendary champions in the game, and that's Marius. Now unfortunately, I haven't claimed Marius yet. I'm very close to do so, and I probably will have him in the next 1 or 2 weeks. But I had to come up with something else than Marius. A lot of people are using Marius with Nude, which is a very solid combo. 2 of the best max HP damage nukers in the game, and you can definitely build a team around that. Also, I don't have a Senna. Senna is probably the best champion for Chimera if you want to maximize your damage. But I don't have a Marius and I don't have a Senna, so I had to figure out something else. And I wanted to find a team that would work for every rotation, or a team where I only have to swap out, one specific champion, but the core will remain of it and the main strategy behind it. And yeah, this is what I found. So basically, when I try to figure out a Chimera team, the first thing I do is what damage dealers are available for me. Now in my case, on my account, the best damage dealers for Chimera are definitely Nude and Ninja. And as soon as I saw Ninja, I instantly thought about Mikage, right? Because we all know in Hydra, that's a very common strategy to use Lady Mikage and a Shadow King nuker, because every time Mikage uses the A1, the Shadow King nuker will join up the attack. And every time Mikage takes a turn, you have basically an optional ally attack with your nuker. So I threw in Ninja. Ninja has decreased defense, HP burn, and places perfect weight on him. Also, he ramps up damage and he can really smack. Then I threw in Lady Mikage. For the ally attacks, she's basically replacing the second damage dealer, causes Ninja to do almost double the damage he normally would do, or something similar, more or less. On top of that, she has increased accuracy if you need to use it. She has Weaken, she can increase the duration of debuffs, which is very important, and she can increase the duration of buffs on your champions, which is also really nice to have. Besides that, she buffs attack up and crit damage, which also boosts the damage of Ninja a lot. Because Ninja stacks up attack anyway, and then you have Lady Mikage with the attack up, and that will boost his damage immediately. Then what is the next thing I want to have in a Chimera team? And the next thing I want to be looking at is decreased speed. Very important, right? Because you want to take as many turns as possible. So in the best case scenario, you use a champion that is speeding you up and slowing Chimera down. For this specific role, there are few options you can use. The best one is probably Nekmotar, because he has decreased attack. He boosts the turn meter by 30%, which is a really huge turn meter boost. This is the biggest turn meter boost in the game, 30%. Only a few champions can do it, like Arbais and Arbiter, for example. Maybe there's 1 or 2 more, but not that many. Then he also places a leech debuff, which is needed for a trial, and he puts increased speed on your team. So very solid champion. Now there are a few options to replace Necmo with, and we're going to talk about it later. But now let's just choose him for now. Then after that, I'm trying to figure out how can I control the Ram form and the Viper form, because both of them are really dangerous, and if I can get some control over them, it will make the run more secure, right? So, of course, the first champion that comes into my mind is Lydia, with the fear for the Ram form and the block active skills for the Viper form pretty much locks them out. Now for the Ram form, it's more of an RNG type of situation because it's not guaranteed that the fear will proc. But for the Viper form, the block active skills is pretty much a complete lockout, and you need it for a trial. And then the last spot is basically for a reviver. You need a reviver in Chimera because you cannot guarantee that none of your champions die. Also, for some trials, you need to have a revive skill. So if I look at my options, let's quickly filter for revive champions. I don't actually have that many options. I do have Molly, for example, which is not bad, but for Chimera, she doesn't really do anything else but revive. You kind of want to bring in a reviver that can place block debuffs too, because that's the one buff we don't really have in this team yet. And you really want to try to block debuffs from the Chimera. For example, the provoke in the ultimate form, or the stuns and fears and whatnot on the Ram form, or the control debuffs on the Viper form, on the A1s. So you definitely need block debuffs to maximize the performance of your team. Unless you got crazy resistance on your team, right? Which is nearly impossible unless you bring in something like an increased resistance buff and the decreased accuracy debuff for the Chimera. That might work, but other than that, you need block debuffs or a cleanse. So if you look at my options, there's only two champions that are viable for this position, and that's Duchess and Siphi. Now, I already covered attack up with Mikage, and Siphi brings me increased defense, as well as block debuffs and increased speed, and also boosts turn meter, which allows me to take more turns and do more damage. So I went with Siphi. And now I got pretty much everything I need, right? I got decreased defense, I got weaken, I got HP burn, I got decreased attack, decreased speed, leech, I got increased defense, I got strengthen, I got increased speed, I got increased attack and increased crit damage. So a lot of buffs and a lot of debuffs. And this composition here will definitely work pretty well against this rotation. But because there are different rotations with different affinities, this team will not work as well every time, right? As soon as I get a force affinity for the ultimate form or the alternate forms, Ninja won't put out as much damage as he would do normally. For example, in rotation 1 and 2, there are forms with force affinity, and that's where I have to find another option as my nuker for the Chimera clan boss. And the first champion that came into my mind, instead of Ninja, it has to be a Shadowkin, right, is Harima. Now, Harima is actually also pretty good. She has decreased attack, and she stacks up defense. She's defense-based champion, so she's not that squishy as Ninja. She can take some hits, doesn't die that easy. And she stacks up defense, pretty much very similar to Ninja, just that she stacks up defense and ramps up her damage that way, and also decreases the defense of the Chimera. And Ninja only stacks up his crit damage and attack. But yeah, they both kind of work in a similar way, just do different things. So this worked pretty well for the first rotation because there we only had Void and Force Affinity. Now for the second rotation, the ultimate form was Force Affinity, which is fine, but then the alternate forms had Magic Affinity. And that is very bad for Nekmotar, for example, because I don't want him to weak hit and then not place a decreased speed. This will cost me a lot of damage and maybe even cause the run to fail, which would be very unfortunate, right? So I want to avoid that. So now I have to find another option for Nekmotar. Of course, you can still run him and, hope for RNG and still do it with Nekmotar, but I'm always trying to find a better solution, another champion that I can use here, which would probably work in a similar way, but has the right affinity. So in this situation, for rotation 2, where I have Force and Magic as the affinities that I'm facing, Force affinity is the best affinity to go for. So I'm looking for a Force affinity champion that does similar things as Nekmotar. And there is one champion, and luckily in my case I have this champion, and that is Arbais. Now of course I would always use the speed aura for my Chimera team. And Arbais pretty much does a very similar thing to Nekmotar. She boosts the turn meter by 30% if you need her to. She doesn't place the decreased speed actively. She needs to be hit to place the decreased speed. So that is one difference. But that also allows her to be used in affinities where she would weak hit on, right? Because she needs to be hit to place the decreased speed. She doesn't have to hit to place a decreased speed. That is one advantage you have with Arbais. And she can place HP burn, which we now miss because we swapped out Ninja with Harima, and Arbais now covers that with her A2 in her alternate form. But that's not the only thing she does. Yes, she's very similar to Nekmo, but she brings so much more to the table and opens up possibilities to complete a lot of trials. She has increased accuracy, she has Revive on Death, which really helps sometimes on the ramp form. She has continuous heals, which are really underrated in a team like this because there's not much heal going on, right? So a really, really solid champion. Now, if you don't have Arbais, there's another champion that can actually fit in that role and is very similar to Nekmotar, and that's Lamassu. Lamassu has decreased attack, has decreased speed, has block buffs, and can boost the turn meter and reset the cooldown of one champion. And if you use Lamassu on your damage dealer, that can push your damage a lot. Now, the only thing that you will be missing if you swap out Nekmo or Arbais for Lamassu is Leech. And then you're again kind of short with heals. You gotta figure out what works for you best. But in my opinion, if you want to use Lamassu, you can definitely do it. The best combination would be to use her with Toshiro. Because Toshiro has Leech, has also decreased speed, all that stuff. So he's a very, very solid champion and also works in this composition, right? So we are kind of like circling around 3 nukers, and that's Harima, Ninja, and also Toshiro, which I unfortunately don't have, but I think a lot of people do. And if you have him, you're very lucky, and he's very, very good for Chimera. But for a Reviver, there are also different options, right? It doesn't have to be Siphi necessarily. In my opinion, Siphi might be best in slot here because of the increased defense, but you can definitely use another Reviver. For example, Pythion would work as well. He places not only block debuffs, also strengthen when he revives. He has an AoE revive, which is better than Siphi because Siphi only revives 1, and he heals a lot. So you would kinda fix the problem of no heal if you would use a Lamassu. Or another option would be Elva, right? Elva is also really solid, can place a perfect whale, continuous heals, cleanse, block debuffs, revive, works perfectly fine. So there are a lot of options for champions you can use here. I think the 2 core champions that never change are Lydia and Mikage. Maybe there are other Shadow King nukers that would work as well as Harima, Toshiro, and Ninja. And if you know which one, let me know in the comments below. But I think those 3 are pretty much the best ones. Oh yeah, one thing that I forgot, there is a really cool synergy between Arbais and Mikage because both of them increase the duration of buffs. We kind of have a similar thing going on in some of the Hydra comps where people use Mikage with Mad Hatter. There's kind of a similar thing going on, and this works also pretty well for Chimera, especially when you have protected buffs and you can keep them longer. On your nuker, he will do more damage. So that is Also pretty cool. But yeah, that's it about the team compositions. Now let's talk about how to gear your champions. Now, the Chimera really has high max HP and also has pretty high defense. So ignore defense sets are really important, especially on non-max HP hitters, right? So I have my ninja in a 6-piece merciless set. I think the best option would be to put him in a 9-piece merciless set, right? So he gets a chance of an extra turn, and extra turns mean more damage. One of the things you have to keep in mind when you're building your damage dealer for Chimera, for example, a ninja or a Harima that is able to place debuffs, and you're kind of relying on them to place the debuffs because you need them for certain trials, you have to build them with accuracy, right? And that means you have to lower the damage a little bit and get more accuracy in. Especially if you have a lower soul like me. I only have a 3-star soul on my ninja. If I had a 5-star soul, I would get more crit damage, more accuracy, and it would be easier for me to build this champion. So my ninja is actually not that fast. And the reason for it is that I don't have to have him that fast because I have a lot of turn meter boost in my team. Now, of course, more speed would be better, but it's not that necessary. If my Lady Mikage is fast, Ninja will do damage every time she takes a turn, right? So that kind of allowed me to focus a little bit less on speed and try to push more damage in. So for his relic, I'm actually using the Coronet because it's basically like a nature's ref, like a 6-star nature's ref, right? It gives him 30% more damage, which is really a lot. Also, it gives him attack and accuracy. I actually had it on another champion, so these are the actual stats when I use him for Chimera. 8k attack and 360 accuracy, which works totally fine. Then I have this gemstone in here, the target finder, which gives him more accuracy, up to 40 every time the enemy resists a debuff. So he will stack up another 40, and that will bring him to around 400 accuracy, which works perfectly fine. So this relic is a huge damage push. Then I also have Nature's Wrath on him, which will again push the damage by 8%. It's a very low soul, but 8% damage, I'll take it. Why not? If you have a 6-star or a 5-star soul, the damage push will be significantly higher. So in best case, you have the Coronet Relic and the 6-star Nature's Wrath Blessing, and that gives you another 60% extra damage, which is very, very high. Now for Harima, I'm using a Savage set and a Speed set, and I made her actually a little bit faster than my ninja, right? I have to say she has a 5-star blessing. She's at 6.7k defense, which is not really a lot, right? It's pretty low to be honest, but she has really high speed and high crit damage, and the accuracy is also pretty good. Now, it has been a while since I used her, but if I would have to use her again, and I definitely have to, I would give her also Nature's Wrath and the Coronet Relic instead of the Cat's Gaze, and then she will definitely perform as good as my ninja, I believe. I haven't seen it yet, but I definitely think so. And this formula basically works on every damage dealer that can place debuffs, which you kind of want to have because for the Chimera Clan boss, you have to have champions that do multiple things, not just one particular thing, right? Now, for your support champions, there are different things we need to talk about. So, first, Lady Mikage, which basically is your second damage dealer, kind of, because every time she takes a turn, your nuker will join the ally attack, or like most of the time, right? So what you're trying to do is to give Lady Mikage as many turns as possible and also give her a chance to reset the cooldowns on her skills. So the best way to build her is to put her in a relentless set with a 4-piece merciless set. So that way she takes extra turns every now and then. There's an 18% chance to get extra turn, and that means every time she takes an extra turn, there's one more attack from your Shadowkin nuker. Then you also have the Merciless set bonus, where you have a 30% chance to decrease a random skill by 1 turn when dealing damage, and she does deal damage on every one of her skills. Her A1 does damage, her A2 does damage, and her A3 does damage as well. So the more you can use this ally attack, the more you will do damage, and as well, the more you can use this A1, same thing. The fact that you can increase the buffs on your allies, and that means that crit damage and the attack up on Ninja or protected buffs on Ninja or whatever Shadowkin nuker you're using, will increase the damage for every turn he keeps those buffs, right? So that is also really, really valuable. So in terms of stats, you definitely want to make her as fast as possible, but she also has to have a decent amount of accuracy. Now, of course, as a mythical champion, she's ignoring 20% resistance of the enemy if she's booked. You still have to get a decent amount of accuracy to be able to increase the duration of debuffs, for example, which is really an important thing in this composition. But you want to focus mainly on speed, because the faster she is, the more turns she takes, the more damage she will do. Simple as that. And then for Lydia, I have a feral set, because for every debuff she places, the allies deal 5% more damage. And she can place a lot of debuffs. She can place decreased defense, weaken, block buffs, poison sensitivity, block active skills on the Viper form, and fear on the Ram form. So that's most of the time 4 debuffs, which is 20% more damage, and sometimes 5. And then you can also give her the Brimstone Blessing, which adds another debuff occasionally, right? So there's a huge damage push from the debuffs of Lydia as well. But this only works for non-max HP damage dealers and makes sense in this composition. So that's why I built her in a feral set. I tried to get her close to 300 speed and still maintain a, very high amount of accuracy, because I want to maximize the chance to place debuffs, because that means the more she places them, the more damage I do, right? So her to have more accuracy results in me doing more damage. Then my decrease speed champion, in this case Nekmothar, is in a Relentless set and the 4-piece Merciless set. Now I think in this case Reflex plus Merciless would be better, just to get more cooldown reduction going, because he anyway takes extra turns, right, from his A3. And every time he takes a turn, there's actually a chance for the Reflex set to proc. But Relentless might be the second best to go for. And my Reflex gear is not that good. But if you have a good Reflex set, which you can combine with a 4-piece Merciless set, if you have some nice Merciless accessories, then you should definitely go for it. So the only job for Nekmothar is basically to place the debuffs and then boost the turn meter as much as possible. I want to have the decreased speed on the Chimera at all times, but also boost the turn meters of my allies, right? That's what he's there for. And the more he does that, the more damage I do as well. So I want to have higher chances, or like better chances, of resetting this skill. So you want to have Cycle of Magic on the masteries, right, which gives you a 5% chance of decreasing the cooldown of a random skill. Then you want to have a Reflex set and the Merciless set bonus from the 4-piece Merciless set, right? 30% chance to decrease a random skill's cooldown by 1 turn when dealing damage. Now for Arbais, you could technically do a similar thing. Now in my case, I use my Arbais in Arena a lot, and I think most people do that have her. So I have her in my fastest speed gear, but also I brought in this Impulse set, which is also really, really good for Chimera, as it has a 12% chance to reduce a random skill cooldown by 1 turn, and that also really helps to cycle skills back. Theoretically, you could also put her in a protection set, for example, because she puts out a lot of buffs, and that would boost your damage as well. And that's pretty much what I did with my Sifi. She's in a 9-piece protection set, and she puts out 3 buffs, increased speed, block debuffs, and increased defense. And if those buffs are protected, which has a 75% chance to happen, the allies will deal 5% more damage per protected buff. So that also pushes your damage a lot. And yeah, I tried to make her as fast as possible, and that's pretty much all I cared about, the speed. And you should do this pretty much with any reviver you bring into the Chimera fight that, places buffs, because it gives you that extra damage push. Also, a very, budget relic, but a very, very solid relic you can use on your turn meter boosters or healers is this Journal of Necrotos, which increases the turn meter boost effects and the heals as well. It is not additive, it is multiplicative, but still it's a little boost to your turn meter boost. So it's a really solid relic to have on your turn meter boosters or healers. Now, as a blessing on Siphi, I use Intimidating Presence. That's pretty much just for Arena, but it also helps for the Chimera clan boss because I'm always trying to use a Speed Aura in there. And I have Nekmotar, which has a Speed Aura, Arbais, which has a Speed Aura, and Lamassu has one too. So Intimidating Presence helps in that case. Then I have Smite on Lydia, right, because of the Feral set, and just it adds some more damage too. Nature's Wrath on your damage dealer, if he places debuffs, is really a huge damage push. And it also helps to have Cruelty, which I have on my Nekmotar, for example, to lower the defense a little bit. Because, as we said, the Chimera has a really high defense. And this also pushes your damage by quite a bit. But yeah, those are the blessings you kind of want to have on your champions in this team. As you can see, I have the Sheep Blessing on my Mikage, but that's because I used her in Arena a lot. I could definitely change it to something else that would be more helpful for Chimera, but I don't really need it at the moment, and it costs 300 gems to change the blessings every time, so I just left it. Also, this team composition pretty much does like minimum of 9 trials on every rotation, right? On Ultra Nightmare. And on Nightmare, it can actually do more than that because the damage you have to do is not that high for some of the trials, and also the debuffs you have to place. So there are lower requirements, right, for the trials on Nightmare and lower difficulties than on Ultra Nightmare. And that's why I am able to do more trials on Nightmare with the gear I have. But theoretically, you could also do more than 9 on Ultra Nightmare. It's just really hard to do. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about this team. I was pretty much just looking for a team I can use in every rotation because I don't have Marius. And Marius is, good for every rotation because he's Void Affinity. But I had to look for a different option, and this is what I came up with. And it's been pretty successful so far, and I will try to work on it. Of course, there are teams out there that do way more than this team, but I think this is a very solid options for a lot of players, and you have different options you can swap in here, but the core strategy remains. So that's actually pretty cool. You just have to adjust it for some of the rotations so you don't weak hit with your important champions like Nekmotar and Ninja, because you want to have the decreased speed on at all times, which is probably not as important as your damage dealer, because if your damage dealer weak hits, you don't do damage at all. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Let me know in the comments below if you like this team, if you can build it, or if you have different ideas how to approach this composition. With that being said, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and see you in the next video.